Hello, and welcome to Talking Toddlers, where I share more than just tips and tricks on how to reduce tantrums or build your toddler's vocabulary. We're going to cover all of that, I assure you. But here, our goal is to develop clarity, because in this modern world, it's truly overwhelming, especially during these past 2 years. This podcast is about empowering moms to know the difference between fact and fiction, to never give up, to tap into everyday activities so your child stays on track. He's not falling behind, he's thriving through your guidance. We know that true learning starts at home, and Talking Toddlers, this podcast helps you develop that with clarity, confidence, and clear communication. So let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to Talking Toddlers. I'm Erin Heyer, your host, and we this week are going to continue with the series on the relationship between eating and chewing and speech development over these first 24 months. Right now, this week, we're going to cover the 16 to 24 month period. So if you haven't heard the previous episodes, I think starting with number 7, 8, 9, 10, and this week is number 11. So we're really looking at by 24 months, the jaw, the lips, the cheeks, the tongue are really working independently. And that's why it's critical for parents to really understand how eating, drinking, chewing, and speech are connected. So let me take a little side note, because there's this thing called mirror neurons, and you may have heard them before, but it's, in a nutshell, it's what happens like if I yawn, you yawn, right? There's a trigger in these mirror neurons, and it's also crucial for eating, speech, and social interactions, developing, acquiring these skills over time. Let me just kind of explain a little bit about mirror neurons, because again, it's really, really important in these first 24 months. But research over the last, I'd say 15, 20 years has really helped us understand how critical mirror neurons are into early development. So, recent research is really kind of looking at that specific area of that frontal lobe, right? And I think it's pretty common, at least with educators and pediatricians and therapists. And so it's kind of trickled down to family dialogue about executive functions, right? And that's part of this frontal lobe. So the frontal lobe, right there where your forehead is the doing part of the brain. And it begins to wire itself very early in development through imitation of movements and sounds that they see and hear through the other people in their lives. And this area, the so-called mirror neuron region, allows for infants to watch and or listen to other people and respond imitatively, or they kind of complement the movements and the sounds. And it's really, again, it's this brilliant part of the human nature that our Creator designed to help facilitate early learning, early speech and language and chewing and eating and social connection. So because this area is the same region in the left and the right hemisphere, but they do kind of different things. So the left hemisphere, which is, again, the part of the brain that really focuses on early speech and language, and that's responsible for fluent, easy articulated speech. It's the physical part of talking, the motor means muscle, right? And movement. And so researchers speculate that it might have been an evolutionary starting point for the development of human language on that left frontal lobe, that left region. And it seems to play an important role for social skills. It's also very critical for athletic development and interaction, because when you're learning a sport, there's so much of watch me, throw the baseball, or watch me, do gymnastics or swimming. So there's a lot of really visual tracking and integration, and seeing if I can move my body like you're moving your body, that imitative kind of task. But so there was some really good studies there in UCLA over the last 10, 15 years that suggest that this area in children in early development with kids who are on the autism spectrum really do kind of have significant challenges. And they have noticed some brain differentiations in the left hemisphere and that frontal lobe. So that's one reason why it's hard for kids who do end up on the autism spectrum to struggle with imitation and following and integrating. There are other brain differences that we can talk about, but the research in UCLA when I was back in Los Angeles, it was pretty profound, and it's really helped us as therapists, as researchers and educators and doctors, but mostly for you parents to understand what to look for and what's important from what's not so important, but how neurons, because it is really important, especially in this day and age with the last 2 years that we all just went through, and our poor babies and toddlers and young elementary kids had to deal with the covering of the face with the masks. It's distorted the auditory perception, and it's really removed all of that visual development that is critical for this early speech and language socialization, cognition as well. But that's for another episode. But the mirror neurons are also very, very important. So my goal here for this week is to help you parents, mom mostly, dads too, of course. But again, my impression is that most 9 out of 10 situations is that the primary caretaker for most of the day is mom. So I'm speaking to you, but of course, the dads, the grandparents, the babysitters, and the teachers all have to hear this too and really kind of think about it. So let me kind of walk down through what the eating development between this 18 or 16 and 18 months through the 24th month, their second birthday, and how that not piggybacks, it really is interwoven with the really fast-paced speech development. So at 18 months, this is really where you should begin to see your child closing his lips and swallowing on purpose, right? It's kind of this integrative process that they have a mature swallow enough, and it does vary from child to child and even meal to meal, right? This is a process. They're learning over time. With every experience, they're going to get better and better. But the big piece that therapists like myself look at is jaw stability. So can they kind of close that jaw just enough and keep it there with the lips closed, and they can begin to really chew and masticate and move the food around inside their mouth. It's crucial, this jaw stability, and it will continue to mature through 36 months, through that third birthday. But by their second birthday, you're really seeing a much more mature chew and swallow pattern, very, very similar to what you and I would do. The other thing about the jaw stability with the jaw height is critical, and I've said this in previous episodes, for all of the vowels. So if I just had parents look at me kind of cross-eyed yesterday when I said, oh yeah, the 22 vowels, and they're looking at me and they're what? And I meant 22 vowel sounds for English. There are 5 vowels, A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes why, and that's important. But through different combinations, the long vowels, the short vowels, the diphthongs, which is when we move from one jaw height to another jaw height, like in the vowel pattern oi, like in foil or boy or toy, right? That's a diphthong. It literally moves, and the jaw height has to have these very finite movement patterns. But also, it helps with the lips. The cheek and the tongue muscles are literally attached to the jaw. So if the jaw isn't stable and can't like hold still, think of like in your whole body where your torso, you can stand still and move your arms separate from your torso, right? And I mentioned this before in other episodes as well. And it's really important for parents to understand how these body parts develop and strengthen and coordinate over time with the gross motor skills, like in stabilizing your torso and moving your arms, but then the finer and finer motor skills, stabilizing your jaw, moving your lips, your tongue, and your cheeks separately. And that's key. And this is where I will kind of interject another little bubble of what are and should we be concerned about this thing called tongue ties or short frenulums. And that's will be a whole nother episode or 2 or 3, because I will have a couple of professionals come in for an open dialogue about what's happening with our kids with these tongue ties and lip ties, and should we be concerned as parents, and are there more? Are there less? Are we just getting better at diagnosing them? And I often say all of the above, but the more information that us professionals can share with you, mom and dad, who are in the thick of it, the more empowered and proactive you guys can be. So it is important, from birth to look inside children's mouths, and I'm still shocked at how many pediatricians don't do this on a regular basis. But with that being said, it is important because tongue ties, and what that means is there's a short piece of tissue under the tongue that will hold or restrict the tongue down. And sometimes, and there's 4 classes, and we can get into all of this later on, but, yes, there are some kids that it doesn't really impact or compromise their range of motion, their tongue being able to hit all of the different spots or impair their swallow. But it's always, always, always worth an investigation or an evaluation. Us speech and language therapists cannot, quote unquote, diagnose it, but we can certainly recognize it. And not all speech therapists, just like not all contractors or teachers or lawyers or doctors are all the same. And, you have a wide variety of skill and knowledge and kind of motivation. My motivation all of these years has to always continue to learn and to always dig deeper and to say, gosh, why are more kids struggling with eating? Let's take a closer look at that. Let's look at all of it too. Let's not just look the oral motor development or the chewing. Let's also look at the auditory processing. Let's also look at the food that they eat. Let's also look at allergies. Let's look at the whole child. So mom and dad, if you're not sure what a tongue tie is or isn't, or a lip tie, I will have a couple of links down below in my show notes to help you at least get started to take a look there and see. So this 18 to 24 months, kids, your kids, the average child out there, a healthy, kind of well-developed, just going for it, happy ideal human being should easily move food for chewing and swallowing in their mouth. And you should see 18, 20, 24 months them to continually chew their food, not stuff their mouth and, kind of almost choke. Because at this time, choking or gagging should be pretty rare. And so what I encourage you all to do right now, or after listening to this, is to, take a bite of an apple or take a bite of, a piece of meat. Just a bite, not a big mouthful, just take a bite, close your lips and chew and see all the moving parts. Feel it. Close your eyes and say, what's happening? And I'm breathing through my nose, I'm biting, and then your tongue sweeps it up. I always tell kids it's like a little broom. It sweeps it up into a pile, and then you bite and you regroup it again with your tongue pulling back and I tell kids like a little cobra head, right? A little snake goes back and then it sweeps it around again with the tip of the tongue, moving that piece of food in your mouth, and you're working it smaller and smaller, and then you're getting ready to swallow. And what does the swallow produce? A nice, healthy, mature swallow by 20 months of age is where the tip of the tongue goes up to those bumps, what we call the alveolar ridge. It triggers, and the sides of the tongue kind of cup up to keep the food, the saliva, the water, the whatever you're eating right there in the middle of your mouth, and then it rolls it back all instantly, beautifully, smoothly, without the tongue pushing out forward, a thrust, right? And with good jaw strength and mobility, with the cheeks being able to keep the tongue in its right place. And all of it is helping you smoothly and easily chew and swallow, breathe, and move on to the next bite. During this time also, your child should also be consistently using an open cup. Where again, I described this in previous episodes, where the lips protrude, close gently but firmly, not loose, and they can really establish that seal so they can take a small sip and swallow it. And somewhere around 20, 22 months, most kids will be able to hold a cup with one hand without spilling and take some sips. Also during this period, around 20, 22 months, most kids will use both the spoon and the fork with their palm kind of facing up as they kind of scoop, beginning stages of utensils. And you, mom or dad or caretaker, should, be cutting their meat and helping them stab the food. That kind of visual motor integration, that's still going to be really, really hard. That's a fine motor task for them to take that fork and stab a piece of food. But you guys can do it. Sometimes it's just a little tap of the elbow or the wrist. But by 24 months, all of this chewing and biting and swallowing and nasal breathing several times a day, that's exercise, that's life experience, that's wiring the brain, that's getting them ready to talk, right? And to communicate and to think and reason. So by 24 months, they should be able to manage most foods that are pre-cut into bite size. They can and hopefully are taking like a carrot or something more crunchy, and they can bite it on the side and be able, even if they bite it up front with their front incisors, they could then, their tongue is sophisticated enough to find that piece of food and swoop it over to their molars. Those are the chewing foods, right? Or chewing teeth. But through all of this, by 24 months, they could eat most meats that are cooked nicely, and certainly eat raw vegetables that are cut in like julienne strips, again, where they can pick it up and manage it. At the same time as they're eating, you should see that they should be able to keep the food in their mouth, keep the saliva in their mouth, drink the liquids, and keep them all in their mouth with a good lip seal. But that requires a great jaw stability. Because if the jaw is lax and it falls open, they're not going to get that lip seal, and that's where the drooling and the food falling out of their mouths, really, that is a huge symptom or red flag to someone like myself when I watch kids eat beyond 24 months. So now let me kind of just walk through how speech is developing at the same time. Somewhere around 15, 18 months, most kids, again, I'm looking at the vast majority of children, have at least 20 words, right? The first words kind of kick on somewhere around the first birthday, but by the time they hit their second birthday, we do expect for them to have 50 words minimum. So by 15 months, they should have at least 20 with meaning, right? They're not just saying words arbitrarily. They're like looking at, oh, doggy, doggy, like where's and they would like even have that inflection like doggy, doggy, where's my doggy, right? Where'd she go? Or cookie, cookie, like he wants another cookie, right? But during this period, it continues to mature across the board, especially breathing patterns. So you're going to see that they're able to have good jaw height at rest with the lips closed, breathing through their nose. And as they physically grow, the lips and the tongue grow and get stronger and more coordinated with that jaw stability, allowing them to say many, many different sounds. And these sounds then can be put into different word patterns. And that's the key that I want mom and dad to understand looking at this 15, 18, 20, 24-month-old child. We want a variety of sounds and words. And that's the big key, especially vowels. And a little later on, I'll talk a little bit more specifically on all of those vowels. But look at the mouth structures and that they have good disassociation. Again, watch your child from afar and see, is their mouth open when they're playing or at rest? Is it open when they're sleeping? Do they have good lip closure? Are they breathing through their nose? When they swallow anything, even their own saliva, can they manage their own saliva? Again, I still have 3 and 5 and 6-year-olds that struggle with managing their own. And then let me kind of tap into some terms that we use in speech and occupational therapy and physical therapy, but also, in any kind of fine movement, looking at grading of movement and gradation, right? So we want these motor skills, these fine motor skills to develop over time and be smooth. It's not my mouth is totally open and I'm drooling on me compared to my teeth are clenched and I'm ready to, take on the world. You have this gradation between. Let me go ahead and try to do this over a podcast. I'm not sure how it will translate, but I want you to think about, I'm going to say these vowel sounds and they're teeny tiny steps. There's 6 steps between the high E sound. Like if everybody, as you're listening to this, you say E, your lips are kind of retracted, your jaw is high, but your teeth are not clenched, and your tongue is kind of pushed up high in your mouth and pushed against your molars. E, and then you do a tiny little step down with your jaw. E, I, like in the word igloo, right? I. So we go from E to I, a, I don't know if it's going to translate auditorily, but what I demonstrate to parents sideways and they can just see my jaw step down in these teeny tiny steps. So I have control over my jaw. I can move it a little bit with gradation and strength and coordination. Because inside my mouth, I'm going to have to move my tongue forward or backwards or up or down. But I need that jaw stability to be able to do that. And then at the same time, during this 15, 18, 24-month period, you have lip sounds like the M, B, P, W, even the SH like sh, 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 or the CH, chew, chew, ch, 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 right? Your lips are protruding and they're moving independently. You have the teeth to lip, like in the F, like in fireman, or the V, like very good, right? And then you have the tongue tip that we've talked about before. Those are the early sounds with the T, 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 the D, duh, duh, and the N, no, right? That's their favorite word. And then the back of the sound. So all of these, like the k, k, and the g, g, the tongue has to move. And I would love it. And again, I will have handouts that you can grab if you sign up for my email list. That would be awesome. But you can get these PDFs and just kind of a handout. My handouts are kind of, they don't have a lot of extra fluff. It's really, really clear and delineated. But I would also like you to kind of just listen and play along and see what your child is doing in real time, in real life, right? During this period, so they're having about 15 to 20 words, like I said, but they can also name, say, 5, 8, 10 different items. Like if you point to something in the picture, what's that? Banana, or they can say nana, right? Nana. And then you would model, yes, banana. You would not repeat his approximated form. You would always strive. You're always giving them that perfect adult form of speech, right? Yes, that's a banana. And then he or she will slowly but surely get, we call it shaping, will get closer and closer to the true form. So they will name things. If you point to them with objects or pictures, they'll label and repeat objects, actions, events, playground, let's go swinging. They'll also request like swing, go swing. And they'll acknowledge you. Yeah, we will in 5 minutes. 5 minutes we can go. Or they can protest. You know that, right? So, but there's so much cognitive development happening at the same time or integrated with the language. And the language is going to come together, putting these words, these actions, these nouns together and understanding it. If the oral motor skills are also developing, they can put all of this beautiful integration together. At this phase of development, they can shake their head yes or no. They can also, and this is important, to say like 2-word utterances or 2-word sentences without a gesture. So, they, such as more cookie, or truck broke, or no drink. And so these are 2 different concepts. It's not all gone, or even like a lot of my kids that I see, they'll say, see you later. To them, that's not see you later. That's a phrase that they recognize as a one unit. But during this period, the critical thing is for mom and dad and teacher and everybody to understand they should be imitating and repeating unfamiliar words that they hear in conversation, right? That they hear, it's sort of like that old cartoon, sort of like the dog, right? Where they hear blah, 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 park, blah, 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 outside. And they don't understand the whole message, but they can really pick up and hone in auditorily. Remember, a long time ago in the beginning of this whole series, I talk a lot about the auditory perception and that they're coding the whole the whole word, but they're also able to do that because the individual sounds are being mapped. So the interesting thing that parents, I think, should really, really understand and not take the wait and see approach, or if the pediatrician says, he's just a late talker, he's growing in so many other ways. It's important to feel empowered, to know the truth, that these little guys between, 18 and 24 months, they're learning new words constantly, slowly, but constantly. So that's about 10 new words a month. So if you have 10 words when they're 15 months, then you keep adding 10 words per month until their second birthday. And then something wonderful begins. And again, I think our Creator was brilliant, because between their second birthday and their third birthday, there's an explosion of language and understanding and cognition and memory and organization and all of this. But if on their second birthday, they have a range. It's still a range, 50 words to about 200 words. 50 is the lowest range. Think of the bell curve, right? And then there's this thing called fast mapping that I will talk at length about in a later episode. But fast mapping means that they quite often will hear a word one time, and then they can really extrapolate its meaning based on the context and the words around it, and they'll learn it. And so between their second birthday and their third birthday, they're learning about, on average, and this is the low end, 10 words per day. So when they're 15 or 20 months old, they're learning about 10 words a month. And then when they're 25, 28, 30 months, they're learning 10 words per day. And that's where we get to 1,000, 2,000 words by their third birthday. So that's why it's really important to not wait and see. It's not worth the stress and the anxiety, and that all of these pieces should beautifully work together. And that's why we call it integration, right? And all of these motor and cognitive pieces are working together to wire the brain. You can look at the oral motor that we've talked about for the last 3 or 4 episodes. It includes the structure, the physical, how are these parts formed, right? And how the newborn baby's mouth is very, very different than your 2-year-old mouth. And the function, how they extract liquids from a breast or a bottle that first month for survival, compared to eating, chewing, masticating, swallowing, with a meal that they're sharing with you and understanding most of what is being said to him or her. That social emotional development of relating and enjoying something together, or preparing it and getting excited and having that anticipation. Oh my gosh, we just made this beautiful pizza together, or whatever. And you're doing it through experience. And at the same time, the cognitive growth. And again, it's really about experience and doing it, not doing it for them. That's why baby-led weaning is so important, so they can really experience and feel things between their fingers, knowing sensory-wise that that's what it's going to feel like inside their mouth, that connection between that fist that they're touching everything and inside their mouth, giving them sensory data points. At the same time, where this network of motor and neurons firing and wiring together are allowing kids of any culture to acquire their speech sounds that they then can put into words for expressive. And at the same time, that foundation of receptive. So your kids at 12 months and 24 months and even 36 months, they understand so much more than they can really express. So don't think that they don't understand, or, think back about what I said earlier in this episode about the mirror neurons. They're going to imitate and repeat after you based on that, as well as their interest in being an active member of your family. We will on later episodes really kind of talk about what is the language processing and how does that all work in the brain. But in order to process language, the physical connections have to be built, right, inside that brain. As a wrap up, I just want to kind of give you a quick and dirty outline of what happens, or what a therapist like myself looks at when a parent walks in my office and is typically holding a child, whether they're 16, 18 months or 24 months or even 3 years, right? So right away, I look for eye contact. Is there a social smile with meaning, right? Is there a connection with me? Are they able to separate from mom or give me a wave and acknowledge that I'm not a bad person, right? And they separate, meaning they don't have to be taken away out of the room, but can mom put them down in a chair next to them after a couple of minutes? Can they move separately and not cling to mom? But right away, I look at the physical structure. I look at their face. Is the mouth open? Are they drooling? Are they chewing on their clothes? Do they have the thumb in their mouth? What about the alignment of the jaw, the lips, the eyes, the nose? Are they breathing through that nose? Are they able to kind of just be at rest? And typically, mom and I will be chatting, and I will be checking in with the little guy or the gal who's getting warmed up in a new environment. And sometimes I do my whole evaluation in my waiting room. Fortunately, I have, in this day and age, I have, a solo practice here. Previously, I have had larger practices with, multiple therapists. So I didn't have that luxury, but still during that time, I would spend a good 10 minutes in the waiting room, letting kids get acclimated. But how quickly can they build that rapport? But I'm also, having a few toys in the waiting room. Can I get them to be enticed with a Mr. Potato Head or some bubbles or cars or a dolly? I always ask parents to bring in their favorite toys. So all of this data collection, as soon as they open that door, I'm collecting information on where is this child developmentally, with the motor and the speech, the cognition, the social emotional, all of this without even asking them to say or to follow a direction. It's all about the physical development where they are. And then once they do establish rapport and say, okay, this place isn't so bad, and mom sets them down or they climb off her lap and they start to move around even in the waiting room, I look at their gait. I look at their balance. Are they able to, squat down and sit and then stand up? Do they have good trunk stability? All of that gross motor development is critical to the fine motor development. And in previous episodes, I talk about that. So go back again to, I think, episode 8. But I also have little step stairs for kids, right? Can they walk up the steps, even if I have to like hold their little hand, but can they step up and then can they go down? I have a therapeutic high chair and I encourage them, climb on up, do it. I stabilize it with my feet, but I watch them physically navigate this 3-dimensional world. And how does he or she move their body in space? Can they, pull up? Or do they have strong enough upper body strength because of all that tummy time? And then how do they put their bum down and navigate turning around? Or there is a belt there, so they have to then lift their leg over that center piece. Can they coordinate all of this without even asking them to speak? It just gives me pages and pages and pages of information of where they are developmentally and how speech is going to fit into that. So I just wanted to give you that kind of, wrapping in this, as the series unfolds. And I want parents to really think about all of these things fitting together. That's how human nature is. That's nature, nurture, that's life experience. And in order to remember, I think maybe the second or third episode was all about that brains are built, not born. So based on your family, based on his or her life experience with you, mom and dad and brother and sister, aunts and uncles, dogs, all of it, whether you decide to send them to a preschool or a day school, it's all about what opportunities can we provide to wire these things together. So on that, I will close for now, and next week we'll dive in more, and we'll dive in more specifically with food and what are good foods for the brain and the baby and growth and development and wiring this brain and the connection between the gut and the brain and all of that good science stuff. I'll try to break it down as best I can. I will have some handouts, some short PDFs on like a checklist, but I'll also have guides to how oral development, oral motor skills as it relates to eating and chewing and speech come together in these first 24 months. It's pretty remarkable, I think. So if you liked this, please share. Help me spread the word. Help me continue to reach parents just like you. It would also be very, very meaningful and helpful if you would take the time to write a review and let me expand my reach, right? That's how all of these social media devices work in the algorithms. And so I need to reach more parents just like you that believe in prevention, believe in being proactive, understanding what they can do in this time. No matter where your child is on this continuum, there's always stuff that can be done to help close the gaps. So take care. I hope that your summer is unfolding when this comes out. It should be in the beginning of July, and I hope you're enjoying family time. Take care. See you next week. Bye.